This is the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. What is up? Happy June 4th, 2024, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Eric Balkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and of course, the FFPC. This is the latest edition of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, a podcast brought to you by the FFPC, myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Remember that you can go to myffpc.com if you are looking for Dynasty Startup or Empire Dynasty Startup action. We have a ton of stuff going on over there at myffpc.com. You can also go there to play in our Best Ball Tournament, which has a $300,000 grand prize this year. That's up from $200,000 last year. And then our Superflex Best Ball Tournament, which only costs about $35 to get in. Last year's grand prize, $50,000. This year's grand prize is $100,000. The FFPC main event slow drafts are already off and running for those of you who want to take a swing at a main event team trying to win a $1 million grand prize this year. You can do so there at myffpc.com. And the gentleman that we're going to have on tonight has actually been participating not only in a lot of the best ball action, but some of the Fantasy Pros Championship action too. The Fantasy Pros Championship, $350 to get in. Remember to get in before June 15th and draft by June 30th so you can get that free $35 team credit. You can do that up to 3 times. You'll have 3 separate team credits on your account. And you can draft for $1 million this year too. Just $350. You'll get that $50 discount off if you get a 3-pack as well. And you can play for a $1 million grand prize this year, like tonight's guest has done. Without further ado, let's bring him in. He is a champion of 12 FFPC high-stakes leagues, ranging from Fantasy Pros to the main event to satellite leagues. Whatever your poison is, he has conquered it. You follow him on the X machine at Tommy Island 69. Please welcome into the show, Mr. Tommy Herrin. Tommy, welcome in, man.
Balky, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, doing good. And listen, you've gotten a ton of drafts in already this year. My goodness, you're already in mid-season form, as the kids say.
Well, let's see if I am. I'm having some fun. I think there's a little advantage here to be had, and we'll see. I definitely won't stop and may change a little bit, but feel like I've got some good momentum going.
Do you think they, when you draft this early, not this early because we're in June now, but I know you started a few months back. Do you think that helps you kind of hone in on who you like and who you don't like when August and September roll around?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's funny. You can look back and see, and you can laugh a little bit at some of the early picks that I've made. But I'm also happy with some of them. Lots of value to be had, and you can see the trends. You can see the ADP. And there's already been quite a bit of movement with folks. So yeah, it works. It works both ways. You know, some people think, oh, I'm going to wait till the last minute. Well, you know, everybody else in your draft waited till the last minute as well. So, it's no real advantage there.
I think it was Dan Williamson from Player Profiler, the overhyped sleeper, said that the misses that you miss on, you know, when you draft early, or even drafting early in the summer, like a lot of people are doing right now. The misses are really nothing compared to the hits. Like when you hit on a player late, it's so much, it changes everything, right? For your team, for your league, and obviously for the championship. Sounds like that's been your experience too, Tommy.
Absolutely. And you know, here's the thing. There's a lot of the folks that may climb throughout the draft season. A lot of those folks that you draft early on are going to be on waivers as well. So you still have a chance to get those. But if you hit on those, then you really hit the jackpot. So
I think that the best thing for us to do, I mean, we could talk strategy all night, but I do want to ask you about some players too that I think are very intriguing and players that I kind of want to get your read on, whether you've been targeting them, fading them, or what have you. The news we got on Jahmyr Gibbs late last week, Tommy, was that it seems like the Lions, as pleased as they were last year with him, sky's the limit this year. They're trying to get him out, not just in dump off, areas where he can get the ball in space, but they want him running routes. They want to get him downfield. This is all music to fantasy players' ears, right? When we hear something like that. Now, it's not like Gibbs is like being drafted late. He's at the 111 right now. The question is, how much higher do you think he's going to go, Tommy? And what's his ceiling? I mean, what are the chances that he finishes as the number one running back this year?
So, I think his ceiling is RB1. Of course, he's got some pretty stiff competition, CMC, Brees, Bijan. But I'll take him all day in that discussion. And I think getting him where you can get him in the back end of the first round is a steal. I think you probably see he's already starting to climb. I think the latest, he's starting to creep up into that 9, 8. He'll probably creep in there, but the Justin Jefferson news might change that. There's a lot of players playing in that, but I think it'll be Gibbs and Bijan battling it out for that RB3 when all's said and done. But I do believe Brees is. As far as ADP, I think Brees is pretty solid, and barring any crazy news, he's going to continue to be very solid in that range. And CMC. So yeah, I'll take him all day. I got him in the 11 in the slow draft I'm in right now, and I was very pleased to get him at the 11 spot.
And you mentioned him creeping up too. I just looked at Fantasy Mojo at Fantasy Mojo on xfantasymojo.com. If you have a membership, or if you're playing in the FFPC, we strongly recommend that you get a membership to Fantasy Mojo. And Darren Amani, the godfather of the Pros versus Joes championship as well. I just looked within the last 5 days. Jahmyr Gibbs has gone as high as the 107. So he went at 107 already this week, and you could be right. I mean, I think that he's going to continue to go a little bit higher. The thing is, like it's like when you're climbing a wall, right? You go up a few feet or maybe 10 feet. It's not that hard, but the higher you try to go, the harder it is to get up that high. And Gibbs is, like pointed out, like the Jefferson thing. I mean, he solidified himself with that contract. I think he's given people the warm fuzzies now. You still have, guys like Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase. We'll see what happens there. But McCaffrey and Hall and Bijan Robinson. I mean, these are not easy guys to overcome. But at the same time, you can tell yourself a story that Jahmyr Gibbs could be the number one overall running back this year. And I think that's what we're looking at. Seahawks. Let's talk about this team, because last year we were excited about drafting really all three of those receivers in Metcalf, Lockett, and Smith and Jigba. I saw a blurb last week or something that it sounds like Jackson Smith and Jigba's work ethic has changed. It's gotten better, and he's putting in the work that this offseason, maybe work that he didn't put in, ahead of the 2023 season. If we look at where these players are going in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now, we see that DK Metcalf, wide receiver 24, end of the 4th round. Jackson Smith and Jigba has actually moved ahead of Tyler Lockett. He's at the 8-10 as wide receiver 45, and then Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 51, going at the 10-10. So about 2 rounds behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is I'm just seeing this for the first time now. I'm actually surprised to see the disparity is that big over the last 5 days. At cost, at one of those prices, late 4th, late 8th, late 10th, which receiver would you want to have on your teams this year, Tommy, if he's got to be from Seattle?
JSN all day. He's one of my highest owned wide receivers right now. I think he showed me enough last year. I like the news on the work ethic, but I think he's stepping ahead of Lockett. And getting in that slot, we got a new offensive coordinator who I think may boost the pace a little bit from what we've seen in the past. And I like what I see. I'll take it all day. And, I think DK, at wide receiver 2, at the back end of wide receiver 2, he's got, to really pay out, he's going to have to really deliver. I think JSN could easily go to wide receiver 3 and into a wide receiver 2 discussion.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? I mean, we were just talking about this. I can't remember who I was discussing this with, but we were going over Smith and Jigba's collegiate career, right? And the put up 347 receiving yards in one game, have 15 catches in one game, and this is Big Ten football. I mean, this is not, with all due respect to the Sun Belt Conference, this ain't the Sun Belt Conference. Like it was a legit conference that he was doing this in, and then he kind of underwhelmed this past year, and obviously, the work ethic thing, I want to say I take it with a grain of salt, but I do think there is something to that. And I love buying a player coming off a bad year. I don't know if he's proven yet, but the fact that you can get him in the late 8th, yeah, I'm very intrigued by that possibility right now, Tommy.
I think he's got a little nose for the end zone too. He showed a couple of spots last year, and I think that that's something I like, and I think that's something that obviously pays out well in fantasy football. So.
Let's go to the YouTube chat, Tommy. Bill Hollywood's hanging out in there, and he says, I got a question for Tom. Do you see any late running back signings that could kill a running back's value? And we appreciate the YouTube comment, Bill. We'll try to answer it here. I want to look at, the free agents that are still out there, and it's kind of pick clean at this point, Tommy. For me, if I'm drafting anybody, it doesn't. Here's why it doesn't affect the way that I draft. If I'm drafting anybody early, there's nobody I'm worried about in free agency that's going to come and take that guy's job away. If I'm drafting like running backs later on, I understand the inherent risk of that, right? Is that sort of how you're handling it as well, with some running backs still out unsigned?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at somebody like I don't know, the Raiders or somebody that you got some young kids there. I'm still, if I'm going to draft those guys, I'm going to draft those guys. I'm not worried who's going to be out there. If I like them, I'm going to go ahead and have them. If they're a free agent, I'm going to sign them. I'm going to draft them now at the end of the draft. So I don't see anybody that's going to change any of my strategy as of now.
So I'm looking at Sharp Football Analysis right now. Just this is just a list of some of the running backs that are still unsigned: Dalvin Cook, Cam Akers, Joshua Kelly, Latavius Murray, Kareem Hunt, Jerick McKinnon, Melvin Gordon, Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, none of these guys are playing.
Thanks for playing, guys. Have
exactly.
a nice day.
And that's the thing, right? Because if the Raiders were to sign Dalvin Cook or Cam Akers, it doesn't really change how I feel about Jahmyr White. And that's probably the best example, right? Because Jahmyr White's, stranglehold on that running back job. We got Famous Jay in the YouTube chat right now saying, is Alexander Madison a handcuff play? And yeah, I draft Madison late, but I mean, I'm not really expecting much from Bill Hollywood.
I'd take a chance on Lob as much as I would Alexander Madison.
Totally.
Absolutely. So
and that's the thing too. It's just like, I'm willing to take chances, like you mentioned, Dylan Lobb, and those are the players I want to take chances on at the end of drafts, because I don't know what they are, and they're probably not going to hit. But I do know what Alexander Madison is, and I do know that there is a capped ceiling there that I don't get very excited about. So
we've already seen it. We've already seen it when he was in Minnesota, and when he had a chance, he didn't deliver.
Right. And I think, and the other thing, well, this gets into the whole handcuff discussion too, Tommy. Like, how do you feel about that? Like when I'm going against, or if I was drafting in the FantasyPros Championship, like you are going against thousands of other teams, I don't necessarily want to handcuff my guy. I mean, I get, if you want to do it with like McCaffrey or Bijan Robinson with Algier, okay, I guess I can kind of see that. But outside of that, man, I want to increase my variance. I want to draft other people's handcuffs. That's sort of always been my approach.
100%. That's exactly. And you said the two that I would actually consider handcuffing in Fantasy Pros. But I mean, and those I don't like target it if it's there and it's a value, especially if I go anchor and then do some mid a little later in the draft, then I might go those. But best ball, I will do a handcuff because I do believe that you can get some value in handcuffing a few guys together. Call it Mostert with Jalen Wright or the folks like that, where there's two or three folks in the discussion, then you can actually get a little value in best ball. But Fantasy Pros and main event, no way.
We mentioned, or you mentioned Madison in Minnesota. There's a new running back that Minnesota has this year. His name's Aaron Jones. Now, no longer in Green Bay. Now he's going to be wearing the purple jersey, running behind either Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy or both this season. I'm looking at the ADP for him in Fantasy Pros right now. Running back 18. He's going at that 5-6 turn. Do FFPC drafters still need to be focusing on him at that price, Tommy?
I mean, unless they want me to take all the shares of them right there, I'm in on him. I'll let you let him slide there. He's really strong finish to last year, the 5 straight 100-yard rushing games, and I know he had 2 different injuries last year. That actually might bode well because it saved a little tread on the tires. You said it, JJ or Darnold at quarterback, which I think means more touches, both in the rushing game and then potentially in the dump down, in the check down game as well. So more touches for Aaron Jones not a strong backup situation. I know Ty Chandler did some decent things last year, but he's no kind of threat. I mean, you're looking at a 70% share of touches, 65-70% share of touches, which I'll take all day in that 5-6 range.
Yeah, I think the biggest, the thing with me, even when Aaron Jones was a Packer, and I always felt he was undervalued, the thing with me is I've never questioned his talent. I've never questioned his role. I've never questioned, what he's able to do. My question with him is he going to stay on the field? And I think, the way that he finished last year was encouraging, but he had 3 serious soft tissue injuries last year. And that's, I think, what knocks him down to that 5-6 range. When he's healthy, he's going to outperform that ADP, but you just got to make sure you got some depth at running back too, which everybody should have anyway, regardless of who they're drafting in the 5th and 6th round. Keep it on the running back tip here, Tommy. Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears, those are the 2 running backs, the top 2 running backs in Tennessee. Right now, FFPC drafters are taking Pollard slightly ahead of Spears. Pollard is a mid-8th round pick. Spears is a mid-9th round pick. Which one do you want to be in business with this year? Would you rather have more shares of Pollard or more shares of Spears?
Spears all day. I've got quite a bit. He's one of my, semi-targets. 800 yards rushing last year with Derrick Henry. Obviously there's nothing but upside for there. Pollard's not going to get the touches that Henry had. They're a great 1-2 punch. I'll favor the extra round of draft value, the youth, and the explosiveness of Tyjae Spears all day.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way I lean to. Although, what I am curious about, Tommy, is Pollard was kind of miscast last year.
Oh, 100%. He's not a lead back.
Right.
He's not true number one.
And now I feel like where we were talking, like Dave Terpoli was talking about this guy maybe being the top overall running back if he ever were to get the backfield by himself. And that happened last year. And granted, he was coming off an injury, and he said, I don't really feel like he said he didn't really feel like he was totally over that injury till December of last year. And now I'm like, okay, now this guy, think about where he was going last year, 1st, 2nd round sometimes. If he is truly cast properly by Tennessee this year, we're talking about a massive, that's like a 6th round drop for Pollard. And he should be healthy this year too. I understand what you're saying with Spears, but you got to get some Pollard on your team.
Oh yeah. No, I can see this thing really flipping back and forth as it gets closer or tightening up, and if it does, then I'll have some Pollard, and I think a lot of it is how the draft flows. I've been fortunate enough to have Tyjae in some spots, and I like him so. But I definitely see your point, and I think they eat together.
And to your point, Spears is actually the cheaper of the 2, right? He's going around later, so I get that too. You can always just wait, and if they start slipping, and then once Pollard goes, then you could put up the bat signal for drafting Tyjae Spears. We'll go back to the Facebook chat here. Thomas Glaze, longtime FFPC player. What's your thoughts on Ray Davis and James Cook, the Buffalo Bills tandem in the backfield there this year? Now, if we look at the ADP, James Cook, running back 14 at the 410. Ray Davis not being taken till running back 48 at the 1207. That is a difference of about 8 rounds, which to me is pretty wide. I think it gets significantly closer as we move into July and August, Tommy. What are your thoughts on him? Cook going that high and Davis going that low?
I'm exactly where you're at. I mean, I think as far as the performing ADP, I mean, Ray Davis could easily be an RB3. We've seen Buffalo give touches to other running backs and still feed Cook the ball. Cook's at the back end of borderline RB1. He's got to do a lot to outperform that. And it's not that I dislike James Cook whatsoever. I like James Cook. I think they're both in a good situation, but we'll definitely have more shares of Ray Davis than I will of James Cook, and already do. Ray Davis is in probably my top 4 or 5 in running back ownership already.
Do you feel because you got Davis so cheap already, as he goes up the draft board, Tommy, are you going to be actually drafting him less because you got him at a better price earlier?
Yeah, he's it could end up being it won't be the Dameon Pierce of 2 years ago when I was getting him in the 14, 15 round range early on in drafts, and he ended up, I think, peaking at like the 4th round when the season started, and so he won't be that situation, but he could be very close. And look, if something happens to James Cook or if any stories change there, yeah, he could really skyrocket up the draft board because if you compare him to his peer group where he's at, I mean. I think he's a round later than, call it, Marshawn Lloyd and some of those folks that are kind of in similar situations. So yeah, I will have some James Cook at some point, I'm guessing, but Ray Davis all day.
Yeah, I mean, I quite frankly, I think James Cook and he has come down. Actually, I'm going to look this up on Mojo right now, but I feel like. Yeah, I mean, if you look back to like March, this is a guy that was going in like the late 3rd, early 4th, and he has fallen now to what I say before, the 410 over the last 5 days in the Fantasy Pros Championship. But you actually, I mean, we've seen him in the 5th and the 6th the last couple of weeks as well, especially right after the draft when the Bills took Davis. So, and yeah. I don't really view him as a special player. I view him as a player that's in a special spot on a really good offense. But then again, you got Josh Allen back there too that could take away some touchdowns from him. And I know they're trying to get away from that, but trying to get away from it and actually doing it, 2 different things, especially once the real bullets start flying out there. We've been talking a lot about running backs here. Let's move the conversation, Tommy, to wide receiver. Jahan Dotson. Now, let's flash back, not necessarily a year, maybe about 10 months. And Dotson and McLaurin started off the drafting season last year, right? McLaurin was up here, Dotson was down here, and then they got closer and closer and closer. And I would say on that final weekend when we're out in Vegas, I saw Dotson actually go ahead of McLaurin in like the 7th or 8th round or whatever it was in a lot of drafts. Might have even been a little bit higher than that. So he made the switch, he made the transfer. But then you had a big letdown from him this past season. Like people who drafted him that high were really ticked off and very nonplussed. And it's part of the reason why he's tumbled so far. 1308 is his ADP in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now. That's like 6-7 rounds later than it was last year. Plus, he has a real quarterback this year. Now, I will say in defense of Sam Howell, that dude was awesome last year as far as fantasy football goes, as far as volume goes. He put up a lot of numbers. Jahan Dotson now gets Jaden Daniels, a better, we think, in real life football quarterback. But what's he going to do for Dotson? And what do you think about Dotson's ADP currently?
I'm all in with him. I think he's actually might be my highest owned wide receiver, or he's in the top 3. Kurt Sam's no longer there. Kurt Samuel. So Cliff Kingsbury. That's a nice upgrade at coach. And look, the guys going around him right now that I've seen, Shaheed, Jack Myers, Jerry, Judy, Brandon Cooks, Romeo Dobbs. No, I'll take Dotson around. I think they're going a round or 2 ahead of Jahan Dotson. I see nothing but Jahan Dotson can deliver easily wide receiver 2 numbers. If he delivers wide receiver, even if he delivers wide receiver 3, it's a huge win at the 13th spot. So I'm taking him all day.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, okay, well, if the question is wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 numbers, it becomes null and void because he's being drafted as a wide receiver 6 right now. He is going outside the top 60. So regardless of what you think of how good he can be, you have to look at like you just pointed out, Tommy, the players going around him, and Dotson represents significant more upside than some of these other guys. Now he goes in like that rookie range too with the unknowns like Xavier Legette, Jermaine Burton, all those guys like that. A.D. Mitchell's another one. But if you want to buy a guy that's already done it, like we know he is not a bust, like we know he could put up numbers, then Dotson would maybe make some more sense for your team there.
And he's got a nose for the end zone too. Just like
Dotson does,
years ago, he showed it. I think he scored like 8 touchdowns as a rookie. So I'll take it all day.
Let's do tight ends because we don't focus enough on tight ends on the show. I want to go through a bunch of them here with you today. The first one, I'm gonna kick things off here with a player in Cincinnati, formerly of Miami, formerly of New England, and now he is being drafted as tight end 28 in the 17th round. Now, I think a lot of people would like to draft 3 tight ends, and this would make some sense. He'd be one of the top tight ends coming off the board after the top 24 have been drafted, and that's Mike Gesicki. Cincinnati this year is kind of as it stands right now on June 4th, 2024, is an interesting thing, right? You have Burrow coming off the injury. You have a brand new running back in the backfield who we don't really know who the running back is to own yet. I mean, we might think we do, but we don't know for sure.
That's right.
You have Chase and Higgins, who are both dealing with contract things. You have Jermaine Burton coming in as a highly touted rookie that has a higher ceiling than the guy that left, and that's Tyler Boyd, who's now in Tennessee. And then you have Gesicki coming in at tight end here. A lot of moving pieces in Cincinnati, but zeroing in on Gesicki, what is he going to do this year? And is he the type of player, if you already have 2 tight ends on your team, that you would want to look at as your 3rd tight end in the Fantasy Pros Championship?
All day long. I think if you look and what's funny is last time we were together on a show, I talked about Mike Gesicki, and I was up on him, and I missed on that. That was the product of a really bad offense in New England last year. I think regardless of all the moving pieces, he's in a better offense that likes to use the tight end, and they've proven that over the years. I think their tight ends combined last year had over 100 targets together. So that's a plus. Hurst had a good year in 22. Uzama had a good year like in 21. I think it bodes well, especially when you're getting him in the 17th round of the draft all day long, especially, if you're sitting there with Burrow at quarterback, it's a nice little duo together to tie that together as well. And there's really no risk in drafting him there at the 17 mark. And there's more upside than risk all day long.
Yeah, and the guys you mentioned, with Hayden Hurst and Irv Smith and CJ Uzoma, like Gesicki, to me, the question with him as far as professional football goes was never, hey, does this guy have the athleticism to play the position? Does he have the pass catching chops, right? Like the question with him is, can he block? Can he be out there on all 3 downs? And so if Gesicki's out there as just basically a hired gun at tight end, like he is the best option that Cincinnati has had since 2020 or whatever it was the last time. That's why everybody was so excited about the potential of Brock Bowers going there, because Burrow could really unlock the ceiling. Now, okay, you don't get Bowers, but you do get Gesicki. And once now Gesicki's there, 17th round, hey, take a shot on him. That's what we're doing. We're firing bullets at these tight ends late.
Great.
Another guy we're firing on bullets on late is a rookie. Jatavian Sanders, tight end 32, 1808 in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Tommy, remind me again, are you a Panthers fan?
I'm a Steelers fan.
Steelers, that's what it was. Okay,
but I don't hate the Panthers. So I've got some I've got a little loyalty there, but I'm totally Steelers fan.
So let me ask you something about, and we'll weave this Jatavian Sanders answer into this. But year 2 of Bryce Young, I think Carolina realized, hey, we got to put some talent around him. So they improved the offensive line. They trade for Deontay Johnson. They get Jonathan Brooks in. They draft Xavier Legette is now there as well. And then Sanders obviously is going to be the young tight end that's going to be growing with Bryce Young. This is another player, 18th round. I don't necessarily think he has the upside of Gesicki, but he's also going a round and a half later. What are your thoughts on Sanders as a rookie this year in redraft leagues?
All day long in redraft. Is perfect tight end 3, and even look, call me crazy. I've grabbed 4. If you don't get a top tier tight end and you kind of play the poo platter late, Anderson's a great addition late. Obviously, Bryce is going to take at least a step forward. I don't know how many steps forward, but he's going to get better. The weapons around him, and he was arguably the best the best receiver at Texas last year. That included Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. So he was arguably the best one out of that group as far as catching the ball. So
Sanders too is again, you don't often see. Well, the thing is, it was like Brock Bowers and everybody else for rookie tight ends this year. So I get it that he's going in the 18th round, but for a player that could be on an ascended offense that we really don't know enough about how it's going to be, playing out this season as far as fantasy football goes, I think volume drafters like yourself obviously should be investing in at least a little bit of Sanders, and I know you've done that as well. I skipped over another tight end question. I'll go back to it right now. Cade Otton, 1403 right now is where he is going in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Now, Cade Otton, the Tampa Bay tight end, is tight end 22. 21 tight ends are coming off the board before him. Dave Canales no longer in Tampa. He's in Carolina, so we got a new OC in Tampa this year. They have Jalen McMillan. Godwin and Evans are still there as well. Mayfield's back for another run. Otton, I think, was a little bit underrated last year, and maybe his ceiling is not so high. But Otton's another interesting guy. Again, in a tight end premium league, Tommy, you're plugging him in here in your lineup, and you feel okay about it on a bye week or injury or whatever. Like, Otton's still got a semi-high floor, doesn't he?
100%. He's got good chemistry with Baker, and he catches the damn ball. I mean, when you throw it to him, he trusted him. And look, this is a year that, and I love Mike Evans, but Mike Evans had quite a few drops last year, early on. And it's not that he didn't trust, Mike Evans, but I know he really trusted Otton, and especially on third down. And I know we did have a change in coaching, but at the end of the day, no real big changes with the offense other than McMillan. So I don't see anything but building on last year. So absolutely safe floor and solid, especially if you have a top end tight end. If you get a McBride or some other that, and or even all the way down to a Ferguson, throw Otton in there as your tight end 2, and give it to me all day. And I'll throw in Gesicki and Sanders and a number 3. So
do you? I know you like all 3 of these guys, Otton, Gesicki, and Sanders. Do you have a favorite out of those 3? Because it seems like you've drafted a bunch of all 3 of them. Do you have a favorite out of those 3? Or is it like trying to pick your favorite child?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It really depends on who I've got. I mean, obviously they're not my tight end 1, so it depends on who I've got ahead of them. And I've been fortunate enough to get some good tight ends. I really don't know. I guess it's I can't pick the best child. They're all great. They're all A students. So
speaking of tight ends, this is the first year that I can remember, and this ADP could obviously change, but as it stands right now, there is no tight end going on average in the first round at the moment in Fantasy Pros Championship drafts. We have 4 tight ends going in round 2 with Laporta, Kelsey, McBride, Andrews. How have you been handling the tight end position this year? And I know it kind of depends where you're drafting, front of the board, back of the board, in the middle. How have you sort of been handling the tight end situation this year? Because I think this is unique.
Yeah, so I've been there's two in that discussion that I've been getting, and depending on where they come, and I've taken Laporta on the wraparound. In the anywhere I'm drafting between 8 and 12 for that most part. I mean, I got Gibbs that draft I'm in right now, the slow draft I'm in right now. I went Gibbs, Laporta to start out of the 11 hole, and happy with that. I love Trey McBride. He was a guy I liked last year, and he's showing out this year. I've been able to take him anywhere in the middle of the second to the back. He even falls to the back end of that second. I don't have many shares of some of the other folks, maybe a little bit of Kincaid, but after that, I think my cutoff has been, in that Ferguson range. I want to get Ferguson or better at a tight end, and then from there, there's some other folks that I do like that I'll take. But again, after Ferguson, that means I'm going to have to stack a few of those and probably go 3 or 4 tight ends versus going heavy anchor and then a couple.
So Ferguson is the 8th tight end off the board. If you don't get one of those top 8, you're telling me that you have gone 4 tight ends in the past on a 20.
I've done that, but more of that's in best ball, I would say.
Oh, okay.
But there's probably a draft or so that I have that if I get sniped enough, then I might have to, depending on where I go. But I try to get Ferguson or better to anchor it, and then I'm not as pressed to add more.
Is there a reason where you have Ferguson as the cutoff? Because Kittle is going after him, and Njoku's going after him, Bowers is going after him. Is there something about Ferguson and the 7 guys above him that you really see a talent drop off after that?
Yeah. I would throw Njoku into that discussion with Ferguson. Bowers, I've got some Bowers, but again, I don't feel as confident there, only because he's a rookie. But it's in that range. So Kittle, I'm not in on this year, even though it's not that I don't like him. There's just so many mouths to feed in San Francisco. So yeah, it's just more being in that range and no Kittle. After that, I feel like I need a little more security blanket after that. And even Dallas Goedert flipping some. So depending on who I have at quarterback as well, I think having that connection helps a little bit, depending on if you've got Hurts or who you've got. So, but I've got some Dak, and he's a nice pair with Ferguson, and I think Ferguson's got. I think Ferguson's better than the tight end 8.
I think it was Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm. I was doing a show with him like a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago now. And we were talking about tight ends, and we were talking about how there always seems to be one tight end every year that's not drafted in the top 12. That's, like the 15th guy off the board, maybe even later, like 17 or 18, that always seems to rise up and have like a top 10 or maybe even a top 5 finish. And when I look at this year's class, or not this year's class, but I look at the tight ends in drafts this year, and maybe this will lead into my final question for you, but I'll ask you this anyway. Guys like Hawkinson, he's being drafted outside the top 12, obviously injury related. Freiermuth outside the top 12. Obviously Arthur Smith is there now, and they don't have Deontay Johnson. Then you look at Luke Musgrave. Tyler Conklin, I know, is a popular choice for a lot of people too. Ben Sinnott, the rookie from Washington, has been getting a lot of steam. And then the 3 guys we talked about early. Of those guys, or maybe anybody outside the top 12, is there one of those players that you think is going to finish or has the best shot at finishing in the top 5 this year among tight ends?
Yeah, I think there's a mix there. I'm growing much more fondness for Tyler Conklin as we build drafts, and the more I think through it, I think he could easily finish in the top 12. Particularly if Rodgers stays on the field this year and plays more than 4 plays. He's going to have a nice connection there. I like Musgrave. He's in a great an offense with a really damn talented quarterback in Jordan Love. So I think he could get there, but I think having a lot of good wide receivers there, having Tucker Kraft there hurts him a little bit. So I'm going to go Tyler Conklin out of those folks, and we'll see. So he'll be, I'll have more shares of him than I do at this point.
besides Conklin, is there another player, regardless of position, Tommy, that you're trying to get on as many teams as possible? And then flip side, is there a player that you're going to try to make sure you stay away from at all costs?
Let me start with stay away because that one's easy for me. It's Kyron Williams.
Yeah.
Staying away. He had the easiest rush defensive matchups last year of any running back in the NFL. He's got the foot problems, and you got Blake Corum. So no thanks. As far as guys,
and the other thing too, and I know he slipped a little bit. Now he's slipped to the third round, still too high for me. Like that's the other aspect too, because he's going so high. It's like, and it's almost like people are just realizing this now with the stuff that you mentioned, the foot issue, and they drafted Blake Corum in the third round, like there, and the fact that he was the volume was incredibly high last year, where this year probably won't be as high given the emphasis they put on the draft capital that they invested in the position. So I'm fine with Kyron Williams, but he's got to be going much later than he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, he was a free agent last year. I mean, it was. In a lot of drafts, right? It's undrafted free agent in fantasy drafts. So yeah, he's. I think he's outkicked his coverage, and I think you're going to see some regression there. So a couple of guys that I want. I don't have one particular player, but I'm gonna have my shares. Obviously, I've got a lot of shares of Gibbs already. I'm going to continue to have those, and then some running backs. Aaron Jones. I'm going to have a combination of, Ken Walker, Ramondre Stevenson. I'm starting to grow a little bit on Ramondre again. He's got good matchups going into the year. You don't have Zeke there anymore. I think I'm going to have some shares of a combination of those guys, one at least. And then I like Jalen Waddle. I've been trying to target him. I think he's at a good value right now versus where he was going last year. And then multiple quarterbacks in that middle range that I've been going after: the Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, and that range. I'll have a lot of those guys.
And Williams is the big fade for you then, right?
Williams is the big fade.
He's the big fade. Okay. Well, a guy that we're never fading, big, small, or any size whatsoever, is Tommy Herrin at Tommy Island 6'9". And what's it been like on Tommy Island this year, Tommy? Because I feel like one of the things that we should talk about is how you fly by the seat of your pants. Like, you use ADP as a tool, but you don't draft by ADP. You take other people's opinions, but ultimately you're the guy on Family Feud that everybody shouts their answer to, but you ultimately make the decision. And sometimes it's an unpopular one. Is there one guy this season that you're like, why is nobody else feeling this way about this player like I do? That where you are alone on Tommy Island on that player?
I need to see on this. Who am I alone on?
Because there's plenty of people that are on the bandwagon with Kyron Williams with you this year. I'm one of them. I have no interest in him whatsoever. And I feel like there's enough people with the Otten and Gesicki and Jatavian Sanders. There's not a ton, but there's enough. I don't know if you're alone on anybody yet. Definitely not Gibbs.
No. And I think about the folks that I've drafted, and I feel like there's enough people out there. I can't put my finger on it yet. I mean, even somebody like Jalen Tolbert, who I've started drafting more and more of, some of these late guys, but that's nothing groundbreaking, and there's folks that are drafting them. So I think I'm more common now, and maybe I'll realize as the drafts go on that more on my island than I realize.
That could be too.
And as momentum what we know is this: at this point, from this point on, any news that breaks is gonna really change a lot of folks' minds, and they're gonna react. So I think that's where being confident in your conviction and your picks helps you out by not reacting or doing a knee-jerk reaction. So
you're still on the mainland right now, but you have your rowboat over there. You're getting ready to go on, and then you'll be on Tommy Island. We'll find out maybe later this season where you're.
I'm having it stocked right now. I'm having it stocked up right now with good food and good booze. So it's good.
Which is all you need, really.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Tommy. It's always so much fun talking fantasy football with you. Tommy Island 69 is where to follow you on the X. For those of you who are interested, as am I. I'm already following you there. Keep up all the great work this season. Good luck in all your drafts. Good luck this season. And you never know, maybe you'll be cashing that $1 million check come the end of 2024.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Tommy. Be good. We'll talk again soon.
Take care, my friend. Take care.
That is Tommy Herrin, ladies and gentlemen, the 12-time FFPC High-Stakes League winner, joining me on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown tonight. That will do it for our show. I do want to thank the FFPC, Tommy Herrin, and each and every one of you for listening, streaming, downloading later, and what have you. We really appreciate that. If you are looking for some drafting action tonight, FantasyPros Championship midnight draft. This is if you're watching it live. If you're listening to it tomorrow, it already happened or it got canceled. I don't know which yet. FFPC FantasyPros Championship midnight draft is filling up. We have about 65 minutes to go before that draft goes off, and I'll be commissioning it. So hopefully we'll see you in there. Take your shot at $1 million and work your way up to that $35 free team credit or three $35 team credits when you when you register by June 15th and draft by June 30th. FFPC main event is going on right now. A $1 million grand prize in that as well. If you want to take advantage, get in a slow draft right now. I know plenty of people are and lubing themselves up, getting ready for the summer of fantasy football drafting. It's going to be a great summer. It's going to be a great time to take advantage of both those contests, as well as the Superflex Best Ball Tournament, the Classic Best Ball Tournament with the FFPC. Those drafts are filling daily as well. And if you want to play fantasy football each and every day of the year, Empire Dynasty startups and Classic Dynasty startups going off each and every day with slow clocks as well. So check that out. Start at $100, go all the way up to $5,000 for those as well. So check that out, myffpc.com, myffpc.com. This will be our last. We're just doing these shows monthly for the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown in the offseason. However, I will be unavailable the first week of July, so I'm going to give a special bonus episode that's going to come out June 25th. So 3 weeks from today, we're going to have 20-time FFPC league winner Stephen Highfill is going to join me. We're going to talk about his draft so far this year and how he is making a run for a $1 million grand prize in both the FFPC main event and the FantasyPros Championship. That will come up on June 25th. We are bringing back live draft coverage on the FFPC YouTube channel as well. It starts up next Tuesday. It'll be a rotating cavalcade of hosts between myself, Aiden LaCourie, and Dave Tripoli. We'll be covering a wide variety of drafts, best ball, fantasy pros, main event. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hop aboard and spend the time with us watching these guys draft, and then jump into some drafts yourself as well. Thursday night, Better Sports Network and the FFPC socials, myself and Ryan Reynolds from Establish the Run is going to be my guest. We're going to talk about how you can take advantage of the NFL schedule in drafting players this year. And then Friday night, Farrell Elliott and I on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, coming to you live at 10 p.m. with another great guest. So 3 shows this week. It's a lot of fun. And if you love FFPC Fantasy Football, this is what you should be watching. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. For Tommy Herrin, I'm Eric Balkman. Talk with you on Thursday. Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.